You can kick us off, Mario.
Okay, all right, here we go. This meeting is now in order. Welcome to the Coral Gables Toastmasters. My name is Mario Litano. I am going to be your Toastmaster of the evening. And actually, I'm also the Sergeant at Arms. I need to begin with that. And today we have an interesting meeting lined up. It's going to be a little bit different, but before I continue, I'm going to go ahead and go over our club mission. Coral Gables Toastmasters, we provide a supportive and positive learning experience in which members are empowered to develop communication and leadership skills, resulting in greater self-confidence and personal growth. Virtual meeting guidelines. All speakers and functionaries, please rename by clicking your name and include your role, first and last name. Please mute your audio during the speeches. Use reaction buttons for virtual reactions. Send private messages to the speakers for feedback if you wish. You may unmute during the introduction, the closing remarks, the award presentation. Former members and Toastmasters from other clubs may be voted for best table topics or best evaluator and may take on functionary roles. Other guests can participate in the table topics but cannot be voted for best table topics. All functionary roles and speaking roles will be granted co-host privileges to share the screen if needed. Our Coral Gables Toastmaster meeting media statement, any and all images and video recordings taken during this meeting will be used expressly only for Toastmaster related purposes and not for commercial gain. And now I will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. And so now I am going to begin and introduce our president, Mr. Lucas Calafell.
Thank you, Mario, for kicking us off, and welcome Coral Gables Toastmasters to the March 23rd, 2022 meeting of Coral Gables Toastmasters. Very glad to be here with this fantastic group of people. I see that we have a few guests here with us, and thank you for joining us. You are most welcome here at Coral Gables Toastmasters. And I want to give each of our guests an opportunity to introduce themselves, let us know how they found out about our club, and what they're hoping to get out of this meeting. Let me start with the first person on my screen, Christopher.
Yes. Hey everyone. My name is Christopher Chung. I found out about you guys with SHN Toastmaster really. I work in Coral Gables, so you guys are pretty close to me. So I decided this may be a good one for when you eventually start looking at Toastmasters. My goal from this is just to really hone on my public speaking skills. My job, I don't really do too much of it, but I do want to get a little bit more expertise in it because I think in the future I will be more. Just be better. So.
Thank you very much, Christopher. Let's hear from turn on your video. Just give it Bangulo or Bangul Zero.
Hi, let me try to start my video. Hi, my name is Brenda Angulo. I am interested in knowing a little bit about what is Toastmaster and how it works. I am currently working as a project manager, and I was actually given feedback by my boss that it could be a good fit for me. So there I took her feedback, and I'm here learning how is Toastmaster and how it could help me out.
Fantastic, and welcome. We do hope that at the end of this meeting, you'll get a good feel for how a Toastmasters meeting works, but we're doing something unique for this meeting. So it will not be, it'll contain the elements of Toastmasters meeting, but we decided to get a little bit creative and give all of our members an opportunity to speak in a different format. but one that is certainly familiar to our current members. And I just want to go back to Lance. Maybe Lance was able to get back to their screen.
All right, I'm here.
Okay, fantastic. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, right when you, I think, said my name, I didn't even know if you said my name because it cut out. So here I am. So yeah, I was just doing a Google search for public speaking, and a skill that I'd like to be stronger at. So I found Toastmasters through that search, and I was trying to do something more local since I'm in the Miami area. I didn't know if you did things in person eventually, but so I decided to join and check it out and see what it's about. I have a product that I'm in R&D phase for that I'm going to launch soon. So it's something that I would have to do some public speaking for and some traveling. So, and also a company that I would be running. So wanted to see what type of skill sets that I could strengthen through Toastmasters.
Fantastic. Direct application of public speaking, which we all can do in our professions in one way or another. And as you mentioned, as far as the question of whether we're doing meetings or we're having meetings in person, that is our intent, to find a permanent location where we can meet in person. We were meeting in person prior to COVID-19. Of course, COVID-19 make that a little bit complicated. Also, given the fact that we used to meet in a hospital. So granted, that complicates things as well. So our hope is that we're able to go back into that space, but we are also exploring alternatives in the Coral Gables area.
Great. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. We appreciate you joining us, Lance, and the rest of our guests, Christopher. And I didn't catch your first name. Was it Brenda?
Yes, Brenda.
Okay, fantastic. Well, welcome everyone. Now I hand it off to our Toastmaster of the evening, Mario Latano. He'll be responsible for guiding us through this journey as we meet together and improve our public speaking skills. Over to you, Mario.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President, fellow Toastmasters and distinguished guests. Tonight, I will be your Toastmaster of the evening. As some of you know, this is the first time that I take on the Toastmaster role. I joined the club last year. I believe it was around this time. It was in April when I went into my very first Toastmaster meeting. And so it's taking me this long to build up the courage to have this role. The theme today is spring. Spring is perhaps one of my favorite seasons of the year. I love Christmas and Thanksgiving and New Year's, spring break. I'm sorry, winter break. But I don't like the cold weather. I don't like winter or fall. So for me personally, the spring marks the beginning of the end of this dreadful cold weather and the warm weather that's coming. For me also, spring symbolizes regrowth, resurrection, rejuvenation. Some of my favorite mini holidays take place on spring. My birthday is in spring. My two children were born in spring. Father's Day is in spring. My anniversary and Easter, that's also on spring. That's okay. And spring break. Spring break is really fun. For me, it also brings back some of my favorite childhood memories. One of my memories that I thought about is of me when I was a child. My parents, they had a house in this neighborhood here in Miami, and it was near a lake. And so every day when I would come home from school, or even on the weekend during the spring, I would get on my bike and I would ride my bike around the neighborhood into this lake. And what I would do is I would walk around the shoreline of this huge lake. And I really enjoyed always in the spring watching the plant life, the wildlife, the fish. I loved catching tadpoles, watching the nesting birds and the little duckling reptile and the turtles in the lake. There were a ton of turtles in this lake. And so when I was young, I developed this infatuation with reptiles and amphibians. And so there were so many turtles in this lake that what would happen is that they would go out into the neighborhood and lay their eggs at night or something. And then after quite a while, they would hatch. And so I would ride around the neighborhood every day in the spring to see if I could catch or observe the baby turtles, because sometimes, unfortunately, they would get lost. I would find them crushed or desiccated, or sometimes I would almost find them almost dead. And so I felt it was like my duty to try to police and save as many as I can. And so whenever I would find a little baby turtle that was almost dead or lost, I would either take it to the lake or I would try to nurse it back to health. And so in my house, I had this, reptilian setup, this aquarium, and I would take care of them until they were old enough to be released back in the wild. I would do it in the fall or in the following spring when they were large enough to have a better chance of survival. But I don't believe in keeping reptiles as pets. I always believe in letting them be free. And so yeah, that's my favorite childhood memory. And funny enough, when I got older, I got tired of doing the whole trek to the lake, and so I decided to start digging a hole in my backyard. And eventually, my dad helped me to build a small pond in my backyard so that I could have my own fish, my own aquatic reptiles, so the cane toads can lay their eggs. And now that I'm older, and I'm fortunate enough that when I did buy my house several years ago, I live on a lake. It was a must thing to have for me personally. And so that's my my thought about spring. I'm also going to share with you some interesting facts about the springtime. That couples are most likely to break up in the spring. So Christmas is over, Valentine's is done. So this is the best time to do it. The next fact is that according to the National Association of Realtors, spring is the most popular time of the year to buy or sell a house, which I think is true because I think when I purchased my house, it was in April. I know some of our one of our members, at least one of them, is closing right now, so maybe that's true. The term spring fever refers to both the psychological and physiological symptoms associated with the arrival of springtime, which includes restlessness, daydreaming, increased sexual activity. Children grow faster during spring, apparently. And lastly, while it's not the best idea to feed wild birds, it is a good idea to put a bird feeder out in your backyard or in the balcony, because spring is the time of the year where birds are traveling and migrating. So this is a good source of food for them. And so that's my spiel about spring. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and introduce our functionaries for this evening. And I'm gonna begin with the timer. I believe Brian is a timer. Please go ahead and tell us more about what it is that you do.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, distinguished guests. Happy to be serving as your timer this evening. Tonight, since we have a real unique time meeting, so the timing is a little unique for this meeting. We'll be starting off with table topics. So for table topics, at 1 minute, I'll be putting up the green background. At 1 minute and 30 seconds, or at 1 minute and 30 seconds, yellow background. And at 2 minutes, I will go with the red background. Tonight for evaluations, we'll be doing something interesting. Same timing applies. 1 minute green, 1 minute 30 yellow, 2 minutes red. As always, we have the 30-second buffer period behind the 2 minutes. So 2 minutes and 30 seconds, I will go back to a neutral black screen, indicating that your time is up. And in between segments, I will be reporting times for all the speakers tonight. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Back to you.
Thank you, Brian, for that excellent introduction about your role. I like your background for the colors. Okay, the next role is the odd counter. which is Jane. Please share with us what it is that you do.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Hello, everybody, distinguished guests. My role as the out counter is to keep track of filler words that people might use when they're thinking about what they're going to say next, such as well, like, so. And really, if you say something that I think is a filler word, I'll still call you out for it if it's not a common word. And I would suggest that instead of using a filler word, it's much preferable to just take a pause to collect your next thoughts. It just sounds a lot better when you're talking and it keeps everything fluid. All right, so back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Jane, for that wonderful introduction. I'm not sure who's the vote counter tonight. Would you be able to do that? Take that on, Brian, as well, and tell us about a vote counter.
Sure thing, Mr. Toastmaster, absolutely happy to serve. So tonight I will be doubling up as the vote counter as well. In between or after each speaking segment, so we'll have table topics and evaluations tonight. Everyone is welcome. Guests, Toastmasters, please send your votes to me for the individual that you thought gave the best response. You can go ahead and send it in a private chat, private message here in the Zoom feature. So I'll be counting those votes and reporting at the end of the meeting. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you, Brian. And now we will go into the next part of our meeting. And we are going to transition to the table topics part of the meeting. So, the table topics today is Lucas. Could you please tell us what it is that a table topic does and introduce the session? Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. For our members and guests, have at any point, whether it was at work or in your personal life, where you asked a question that just threw you off and you didn't know how to respond? Raise your hand if you can identify with that. Okay, quite a few. So in a sense, you had to improvise whatever your response might have been if you were able to come up with one. And that's Table Topics is here to help members develop their improvised speaking so that when they get those questions that come up out of nowhere, they're able to construct a cohesive and coherent response to answer the question. So we practice this in every Toastmasters meeting because it is a valuable skill to have both personally and professionally, in addition to preparing speeches and giving them in a longer format. In light of our theme, today's table topic questions will relate to the spring and seasons in general. No one here knows their question ahead of time. And I would like to know from our guests, would any of you be interested in being asked a question? There is absolutely no pressure, no requirement. But if you are interested, just simply raise your hand so that I can recognize you, and then I'll get to you as we move along in the table topic segment. Let me just quickly browse through. Okay, that is totally fine. So let's go ahead and get started. How has the recent change in time affected you? Jane.
For that question, Mr. Table Topics Master, I absolutely have an answer in mind. The first thing I think of when you mention change of time is daylight savings time. And I don't mean to be trite. I don't mean to talk about something that we're all probably tired of talking about for last week or whenever it happened. But I think that this is my preferred. All right, let me tell you why I like this change in daylight savings time. It's nice to leave work and still see that there's sun out, and it feels like you still have a chance to make something of your day. It's not like you leave the office or you leave wherever it is and you're like, That's it. It's off to bed, and then I'm off in the morning, you know, to work again. And also, since it's darker later, if you wake up a little bit later than 7 a.m., it still feels like it's super early, and you're one of those like Tony Robbins-esque people. At least you can convince yourself, oh, it's dark out. I'm up when it's still dark out. So that's a good thing. I think the question was, what is different about this change in seasons, spring? Hard also to answer that since we're in Miami and it's summer year long, but at least we still have daylight savings time throwing us off. Back to you, table topics master.
All right, thank you very much for your response. What role do seasons play in your life and when it comes to planning? Brian, I'll time you, by the way.
Seasons in my life when it comes to planning. I think I'm notoriously an absolutely terrible planner. Anyone who knows me knows I'm throwing plans and ideas together last second. So I think when it comes to seasons, it's just more of the same. You know, Christmas time, we're getting ready, we're buying gifts, getting loved ones things that they may need or want to show that, hey, thanks for being in my life. Thanks for everything you've done for me. Let me get you this beautiful Christmas gift. I'm the guy last second in the mall scrambling. Summer vacations, everyone's going away. They're planning trips to Paris. They're planning trips to Italy. Last second, I'm thinking, hey, I live in Miami. Maybe the Keys, maybe an hour away. I'll just hop in the car, get there, no problem. Nice little summer vacation for me. Take a weekend. So when it comes to seasons, like I said, it's just more of the same with me. Planning, doesn't matter what time of year, we don't go well together. I got one track mind. I'm always thinking about work or what's on the agenda for today. Toastmasters for today. Excited, looking forward to it. So that's how it comes when it comes to planning and the seasons. No matter what the season, it's just what's on the agenda for today, and I'll figure it out as I go. Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master. Back to you.
Thank you very much. Would you prefer to live in a place where it is spring all year long? Or would you prefer to live in a place where you have all the seasons and you get to see that contrast between the winter leading up to spring? Gilberto.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Well, I think that both places have their advantage. For example, I lived before for about 10 years in Chile, and the place in Chile where I live, it has the 4 seasons. I'm originally from Cuba, and in Cuba, for example, you know, it's all year summer, like here in Miami. And for me, it was very interesting to see how in the specific days, the change from winter to spring, for example, or very, very interesting to see how the season happens and how the people, for example, use different clothes in every season and do different activities. At the same time, when winter hits strong, it's very difficult. For example, if you have small children or something like that, because they can play outside, for example, the same way that they do when it's summer or another season. In the other hand, here in Miami, that is more or less always summer, is very nice because you have good weather almost all the year. Some people say that maybe it could be a little boring that way, but in general, I like it a lot. Because I live in Chile and know more about another weathers, I hate summer in general, because most of the time are too hot. But if you don't work, for example, outside, it's very manageable here, for example, that you have air conditioning in every place. And what more or less that. Back to you, Mr. Table Topic Master.
Thank you very much, Gilberto.
Thank you.
All right. The President of the United States has come to you and says, we need an answer. You have to decide whether we keep daylight savings or not, period. It will affect everyone in the United States. What will your response be, Mario?
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics. What would I say? I mean, I don't have a strong opinion on the matter, but I would say to get rid of it because eventually it goes back to normal, right? So why would we have this time? For me, it causes a lot of inconvenience. Brings me a lot of inconvenience because sometimes I forget to change the time, and I'll be late for work or I'll be early. But I think if it were up to me, I would be okay with getting rid of the daylight savings. I'm not sure what else I could say to that, but yeah, I mean, I don't think it's necessary. I'm not gonna miss it at all. But it would be such a great honor to be approached by the president, about wants to know my opinion. Would you imagine? That would be probably the most interesting thing about this question. But yeah, that's my answer. Back to you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Mario. Want to put a final call. If any of our guests would like a question, just raise your hand and I'll be happy to give you one. Otherwise, we will move on. Okay, very well. Let's hear from our timer. How did everyone do this evening?
Certainly. Thank you very much. First off, we had Jane with 1 minute and 17 seconds, myself with 1 minute, 27 seconds, Gilberto with 2 minutes and 7 seconds, and Mario with 1 minute and 15 seconds. So everybody qualifies. Feel free as the vote counter to send me your votes as well for the individual that you thought had the best response. Thank you.
Fantastic. So as Brian mentioned, everyone can vote on who they believe gave the best response to their question. How do you vote? Open up the chat function in Zoom, send a private message to Brian so you can easily find him by scrolling down to where's his timer/vote counter, clicking on his name and sending him who you believe did the best job with their table topics question. I'm going to hand it back to our Toastmaster of the evening to introduce the next segment. Over to you, Mario.
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master. We're going to change it up a bit in this particular meeting. And so what we are going to do is we are going to observe a Toastmaster speech, an icebreaker. And then what we're going to do is that we are going to do a little mini evaluation. And so we'll do like a round robin evaluation of the speech to see what you think the contestant or the speaker did correctly, or if you saw some room for improvement. The evaluator part is probably one of the most important roles in Toastmasters, is because this is where you are empowered to help someone improve their public speaking skills by giving them candid feedback. And so what we're gonna have is Lucas is gonna play the video of the speech. We're gonna listen to it and we'll do the round robin, okay? All yours.
Thank you, Mario. And before I share my screen, just for our members, make sure that you jot down notes as if you were giving an evaluation for one of our members giving an evaluation. As Brian mentioned, the timing will remain 1 minute green, 1.5 yellow, and 2 minutes red. Let's get the show on the road.
I'm sure we're all going to hopefully give you that feedback you're asking for. We're going to move on to our third speaker of the day. Our third speaker of the day is working on an icebreaker. Icebreaker is always my favorite speeches because it's kind of the setting point. This is where the beginning of it all begins. Today's icebreaker is from the Dynamic Leadership Level 1 Mastering Fundamentals speech. The purpose of the project is for the member to introduce themselves to the club and learn the basic structure of a public speech. Here with a speech titled The Beautiful Game of Football, please welcome Kyrene Hall. The Beautiful Game of Football, Kyrene Hall.
So Toastmasters, I'm going to take a second time round and ask you a special question. Have you ever seen a parent screaming at a football game, "Run, run"? Have you ever seen that before? If you have met my dad. You see, my dad wanted to be a professional footballer. And he planned everything out for himself and his son. He looked at the food, he looked at the fitness, he looked at how much they have to work out. He envisioned his son being a professional footballer in the World Cup. Think Messi. That's my father's dream. He had a little problem though. He didn't have a son. He had me. So I had to learn to play football. I do like to run, but I hate football. I'd like you to imagine for a moment England and what you know about England. Damp, cold, wet. This is England. That was football for me. From age 5 to around age 10, I was rolling around in mud playing football. And I say football is the one we kick with our foot, right? It's soccer, not the football of America. So I was rolling around and I hated every minute of it. I had a lot of bubbas then. I got punched in my face a lot. Hated it. Well, Bubba was actually these guys, or sometimes these ones. But my idea of a Saturday morning was not playing football, rolling around in the mud. I cried, I was scratched up. I hated it. But I'll tell you what I loved. You see, my parents divorced when I was about 6 years old. And every Saturday morning, when my dad took me to football, I would have brunch with my dad. And that was the most beautiful memory of my childhood, is having a one-to-one with this guy, my dad, who decided that he had to teach me to be super athletic, and he had to break down my game by teaching me how to pivot. You see, he'd show me how to go to the right, and he'd show me how to go to the left, to figure out how do I get this little ball across the field. Well, I practiced a lot, and eventually I was able to do it. I had a hat trick. A hat trick is 3 goals in one game. Could you imagine? The goal who fell down every time, get hit in the eye, was able to figure out how to get 3 goals in one game. But it was so worth it because when I looked up, my dad had such a huge smile. It wasn't about the game. It was just about really making my dad happy and the time we spent together. So football for me is often referred to as a beautiful game in London, but it brings together memories and thoughts of my childhood, and ones that remind me of the time that I spent with my dad. But what was special about spending time with my dad is that he taught me how to pivot. And I've used that strategy. So pivoting meaning going to the right and kind of going to the left. And that's how you move the ball down the court. And I find that I use that concept of pivoting now in my life. And pivoting, the word pivot itself, right? Now with the pandemic, we talk about pivoting to online. We talk about pivoting our jobs. We talk about making changes, essential changes to get us to where we need to be. Well, what does it mean for me and how have I used it? That moving to the right and moving to the left that my dad taught me? Well, it's an acronym for P for persistence. What I learned in playing football, it took me maybe 2 years to get of my first goal, but it's a persistent and the consistency of doing what I need to do every day, every time. Being relentless in doing the necessary things. I is to be incredibly intentional. You see, in football, it didn't matter if you pivot to the right or the left, but you had to pivot. You had to make a decision. So it's about making that decision and taking action. So being very clear, very intentional. You don't know if it's right or wrong. That is not the question. It's about making a decision and making a choice. V is visualization. The whole idea is that you cannot hit a target that you cannot see. And you first visualize in your head, you saw it, and then you made it possible. It becomes possible in your body. O, ownership. It's up to you, right? If it's not you, then who? And so making the decision that I'm going to run, I'm going to be there, I'm going to take it all the way across the field, it's going to be my day. That decision has to be made not on the field. You have to arrive deciding that this is your ball and you're going to take it. And last, T. T for me, this one is super important, is the whole idea in the game of football is that no one man is an island. That is together we travel. You know, there's a saying, alone you go fast, but together you go much further. There's another saying that we are as good as the 5 people, or we're a sum total rather, of the 5 people with whom we surround ourselves. So the whole idea when we think about football is this idea of team sport, collaborating and doing your bit to help everyone go along or to win, that we win together. So what my dad taught me as a child and what I remember from that game, and my dad's died, unfortunately, but whenever I watch football or as I navigate through life, is this whole idea of how do I pivot? How do I stay persistent, be intentional, visualize, own it, the decision that I make, and do it with team. And if it's something I've got to do alone, do it in a timely manner. So I encourage you all Toastmasters to pivot to the right or to the left, make that decision, and back to you, Toastmaster.
Okay.
Okay. All right,
So
thank you.
Yeah, take it away, Mario.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is we'll kick it off first with our first round robin mini evaluation. Would it be okay, Mr. President Lucas, if you can go ahead and kick us off?
Yes, absolutely. So I thought that was a great icebreaker because it told a story. I enjoyed the way that the speaker delivered the content, and it was very relatable. She gave a story, and I like that she incorporated a lesson. We heard the word pivot, but she transformed that into an acronym, and she gave specifics on what pivot means in that context and how the audience could use it for themselves. She would have told this story, and we would have understood her father's passion for football and making her do football and watching her improve. But I think a question that does come up is, well, so what? And she answered that for us. She gave us those lessons, that acronym that we can carry with us. It's very relatable because it spells out a word. What I think the speaker could do to elevate her speech came from the technical side of things. There was some issues with the PowerPoint towards the beginning. She went ahead in her slide, and when she put it up, we could see all the slides already. When it comes to a PowerPoint, the slides should be ready to go so that the moment that they're on, the first slide is there and everyone can see that first slide clearly. The other thing that I thought she could improve on is just to be a little bit more concise when it came to the acronyms. From my perspective, I felt that she spent too much time in the weeds with each acronym. I felt she could have been more concise. She could have made her point more clear and provided that to the audience. I think if she would have done that, she would not have gone over time. One thing that was noted there is that at a certain point we missed her, right? Because whoever was recording it went to gallery view instead of speaker view. So we lost her in the view there, but obviously not of any fault of hers. But I thought her hand gestures and the fact that she stood up was fantastic. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Lucas. That was a masterful evaluation, model evaluation. Let's go now with Jane. What did you think about this particular speech?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Kind of wish Lucas to go first, but I do have to agree with some of his points. What I was thinking was that, first off, I wish that the speaker would have had her window bigger. Just a personal preference. I know that if we were in person, then they would have a big screen behind them and the speaker would be here. But personally, I feel like, and maybe this could have been on the fault of the person recording, but I wanted to see more of her since she's the speaker, and to me, the presentation is secondary to the speaker. She had a very attention-grabbing introduction. I always loved like those attention-grabbing, forceful introductions where you immediately get the audience involved. Her gestures were wonderful. She's very good with her body language, very expressive. Something that I particularly liked about the speaker, which is I think a natural talent of hers, is that she's a very visual storyteller. She uses marvelous adjectives like damp, cold, wet. And when she was describing herself as cried, scratched up, hated it. She's very good at using these visual terms to really help you imagine what she was saying back then. And I agree that audiences love tools like acronyms. I think that pivot acronym that she used worked excellently for her. I also loved her control of volume. She had this calmed, low voice that she variated her emotionality with. Like she would just lower it like and talk very low. And it was just it was a nice balance to the emotiveness. And unfortunately, she went over time. And I have to say that I think she could have trimmed her content a little bit, not for lack of content. I think she had good content, but it was strong enough that she didn't have to go too much into detail with things. But overall, a great icebreaker. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Wow. Oh my gosh, another masterful evaluation by the Area 54 runner-up, Jane. Thank you. That was a good point. Yeah, she did go over time. And now let me go and pass it on to Gilberto. Please let me know what you thought about this speech.
Well, I think that it was, from my point of view, a very good speech. I don't know too much about the technical part regarding evaluator speech itself, but from my point of view, a lot of energy. She was very expressive, very engaging with the message, very good images to support the presentation. At the end, I think that she spent too much time with each specific words and the meaning, but was your maybe if they could a little on that part, she could be able to achieve to manage the time, the presentation time better. But in general, from my point of view, the most part, one of the most important of any speech is to be able to engage with your audience and to grab their attention. And she totally get it from my point of view. Thank you so much, Mr. Toastmaster.
Great job. That was pretty good. Pretty good. Yeah, she did spend a lot of time talking about, you know, it was cool that she talked about each one of her pivot, but spent a lot of time on each one. And now let's go with Brian. Brian, what did you think about this speech?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Something that I always say when I'm giving evaluations, it was the first thing I heard when I entered the club. Start with a bang, end with a bigger bang. And I think she did just that with the start. She got right down to business. Instead of addressing the crowd, addressing the audience, right into her speech. I thought was phenomenal. The pacing, her body language, she was centered in the screen, hand motions, her attention into the camera was always on point. For an icebreaker, it's one of the best I've ever seen. I don't know if she has public speaking experience, but for an icebreaker, for your first speak in the club, that's pretty good. That's as good as they get. Something I wish she would have done a little better was get to the point of the speech a little faster. I think it took her a little long to get to the pivot acronym. It was solid and it was a solid message. Get to the acronym a little quicker. And then instead of just leaving us with the acronym, let's hear some experiences from her own life of how she pivoted. Maybe I think we all have that experience. We're here. And she mentioned it, how in Toastmasters, we've gone to Zoom, but I wanted a little more. How has the pivot acronym really played a role in specific areas of her life? And I thought she really could have hit home a little better had she gone that route. I know with all of us, we're here on Zoom. Lance, I'm sure he's R&D with a product. I'm sure there's some pivoting process going on there. So if Lance was given that speech, he could have something to talk about with that pivot acronym, something close to home for him. But overall, I mean, phenomenal speech, and I wish she was part of our club. I'd love to hear some more speeches from her. That was great, and thank you very much, Mr. Toastmaster. Back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. That was a very solid evaluation. And now, if any of the guests would like to volunteer, please raise your hand. You could just talk for a minute or however long you want to give your opinion on this speech. You can raise your hand or use the raise hand emoji.
Yeah, this is Chris. I just chime in a little bit. Football, I mean, that's close to my heart. I love that sport. I'm from the Caribbean originally, so football is near and dear to me. With respect to her speech, I mean, as a lot of girls said, the beginning, the opening was phenomenal, 41 times. But then after, I think like the way she went through the different intonations, like at the beginning she started, and then when she started talking about that, she kind of dipped down a little bit. I think we all went on like that little ride with her as the emotions kind of flew. So that was pretty good. I mean, a very, very good speech. Seeing as one of our first speeches, I can't believe it. I hope one day when I give my first speech, I can be as confident as she was. The only drawback I would say is the beginning with the slides. Yeah, usually I guess when it's your time to go, you probably want to have everything set already. So that's probably the only drawback. Other than that, very, very good.
Thank you, Christopher. That was a great job. Yeah, sometimes when I see these the DTM speakers, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's gonna take me like 10 years to get that good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would any of the other two guests like to jump in and give their comment? Okay. All right, so we're gonna continue. Great job, everyone. You guys are, I think, did a great job evaluating. You know, probably did a better job than I would have done. Okay, so can we get a? So what I did I forgot to mention earlier, but what we did is that we did a 1 minute 30-second timer. And so I was hoping to get a timer report. Brian?
Absolutely. First off, we had Lucas starting the show with this round robin evaluation going at 2 minutes and 13 seconds. That qualifies. No worries. And the 30-second buffer. Good job, Lucas. Jane, 1 minute, 58 seconds. Gilberto, 1 minute, 19 seconds. Myself, 1 minute, 13 seconds. And Christopher coming in with an excellent evaluation, just short of qualifying time at 55 seconds. But pretty good evaluation to start us off. Excellent job, Christopher. Mr. Toastmaster, back to you.
Thank you, Brian, our timer. Also, please send your votes for this particular session to Brian. And now, I believe I will go into our closing part of the meeting. So thank you so much. This was the first time that I do the Toastmaster. I was kind of just winging it, and I think it worked out okay. Let's see. The table topics were really interesting. I liked Gilberto. He's talking about Chile. You know, I've been to Chile in the summer. Not even the summer. I was there in spring. I was there for spring break, and man, it was hot, and like no one has AC, and so it was uncomfortable. I didn't have a good time at night, and we had great guest participation. I was really happy that we had these guests and that they spoke and introduced themselves and participated in the mock evaluation of that speech. And yeah, and we had great evaluations from all our Toastmasters. They did an awesome job. And so now I'm gonna pass it on over to our president, Mr. Lucas Calafell. Back to you.
Thank you, Mario, and fantastic job serving as the Toastmaster of the evening. Before we move on, I want to hear from Jane, our out counter. I want to know how we did when it came to the ahs, ums, and the like.
Yes, Mr. President. So for tonight's all counts, for myself, with your help of counting, I had 1 3 ums, 1 ah, and 2 likes. Gilberto, I have 1 well, 6 A's. I think that's your biggest crutch word, and 1 O. For Brian, I had 1 ah. For Mario, I had 2 uhs, 4 ums, and 1 yeah. And the speaker in the video had 1 and Lucas just perfect apparently when it comes to his filler words. So back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely sometimes difficult to keep a clean record. So I'm really surprised. I thought I had at least one or something like that. But thank you, Jane, once again for being our R counter and supporting us, keeping us on our toes when it comes to the crutch words. Genius, the bell emoji. I never thought of that. Fantastic. It would be nice if the emoji made a sound. That would be, we gotta get on to Zoom about that.
The sound is what was scary in person because it would just like take you off guard.
Absolutely. Okay, well, our Toastmaster closed out the meeting. He passed it back to me. Now I want to hear from our guests and what they thought of tonight's meeting. Do you see if Toastmasters can support you on your public speaking journey? Let's hear from Christopher.
Yes, it was very eye-opening. It's very impressive, to be honest. You guys are pretty good at what you do. I personally like that icebreaker that you talk about football. That was quite an intriguing story. We should also do on Netflix pretty soon. But yeah, certainly taking a decision and I'll be back certainly in the future.
Okay, thank you, Christopher. We lost you a little bit there with the audio. It just started coming in a bit low, so I didn't get the last part. Maybe that was just me, not sure.
Oh, sorry, yeah. But yeah, no, I was just saying, thoroughly enjoyed it. I enjoyed being here with you guys tonight, and I'll definitely be back in the future.
Okay, I heard you loud and clear there. Thank you very much. Let's hear from Brenda. Feel free to turn on your video, unmute, and share your thoughts with us.
Okay, I'm really impressed with your skills, your public speaking skills, guys. You are doing a great job. And I think you have been having a long time of practicing. It's very, I could see that's a lot of improvement and achievement from your side. And keep doing this. I enjoyed the session. It was really interesting. Hear the topics and enjoy the video that we had about the pivot speech. It was very interesting, motivational, and very nice. So thank you for having me today. It was the first time for me ever being in a Toastmaster. So I do appreciate you accept my proposal for being a guest. So thank you very much. And nothing else to share.
Thank you very much, Brenda. We appreciate your feedback. Last but not least, let's hear from Lance. Feel free to turn on your video, unmute, and share your thoughts with us.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I enjoyed the example speech that lady gave. I was curious, where you said she's not a part of your Toastmasters group, but where is she from? She's a part of another Toastmasters group, or?
Yeah, from what I saw, because it was pulled from YouTube. It's a club called Online Presenters, which I think is an exclusively online club. So they're not a club that at any point will be meeting in person.
Oh, I see. It's okay. So it's not, I know that Toastmasters is a national organization, right? So it's not necessarily part of Toastmasters, but they do similar exercises, I would guess.
No, they're in Toastmasters. Oh, and sorry for interrupting you. Yeah, it's a Toastmasters club.
Oh, okay.
Because it is an international organization, so there are clubs in, well, I don't know the number of countries, but definitely more than 40 countries around the world.
Right. Yeah. So I know what I found interesting was the counter, because I definitely struggled with that for a while, and it just really took one of my friends to call me out on it, and just realizing that it makes you maybe not sound as intelligent. It's kind of, yeah, it's just a filler. It's preferable to just, pause versus doing that. Maybe it's a need to, have to continue to speak, and the awkwardness of the silence. So it's something that I've worked on and I've gotten better with. So, but I definitely see that that going through this process would definitely be helpful. And I am impressed with all of your skills, all the people that are part of the Toastmasters. So I look forward to meeting with you all again.
Fantastic, Lance. Thank you for your feedback, and we are more than happy to have you in our meeting this evening. I'm going to jump back to one of our functionaries, our vote counter, Brian. He has some winners for us. Brian, over to you. Who are our winners for tonight?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight, I'll start off with table topics. We had a tie. Coming in, well, tied for first place, we have Mario and Jane. Phenomenal jobs with your table topics responses. And in evaluations, I loved our evaluations tonight. A very unique round robin experience, something that we don't always get to do. I thought it was fitting for tonight's meeting. Lucas coming in first place with his round robin evaluation, always with the expert evaluation, the expert critique. Just always brings it. Excellent job, sir. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you, Brian, for tallying those votes and producing our winners for us. So at this point, that concludes the meeting. I'm going to stop our recording